We're back now with international reaction to the decision by the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade. President Biden is in Germany for a major summit with G7 leaders, with the war in Ukraine topping the agenda. But ahead of that meeting, some of those leaders have condemned the ruling. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called the news, quote, horrific, saying his heart goes out to millions of American women. He added, quote, no government, politician, or man should tell a woman what she can and cannot do with her body. France's President Emmanuel Macron expressed his solidarity with women, tweeting, quote, abortion is a fundamental right. It must be protected. Those views were also echoed by British Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
This is not our court, it's another jurisdiction, but clearly it has massive impacts on people's thinking around the world. It's a very important decision. I've got to tell you, I think it's a big step backwards. I've always believed in a woman's right to choose, and I stick to that view.
NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell is covering the G7 meeting in Germany from just across the border in Austria. Kelly, good morning. Thanks for being with us. So, strong reaction there from some of these G7 leaders about this decision. First, let's just talk about the timing of this ruling. The fact that it comes right as President Biden is among all these other leaders. The focus wanted to be on something like Ukraine. But what does this moment now mean for America on the world stage?
Well, it is interesting that the focus on what is happening at home always travels with an American president. And certainly these leaders have registered their views, and it does affect an American president if there is turmoil and division at home. At the same time, they are here for a limited amount of time to work on very serious issues. And so leaders at this level are able to compartmentalize. And President Biden was asked if this decision has come up in the conversations, and he said it has not, at least not in any of the formal dialogue between the leaders. He is aware of the views of these leaders who he has dealt with and has a personal relationship with. And certainly when there is ever some kind of division, unrest, distress in the United States, that affects certainly how the American president is viewed on the world stage. Of course, President Biden is not directly involved in this kind of a decision. The Supreme Court is a separate branch of government, but they are also able to put that aside, if you will. Does it affect sort of the American reputation? Perhaps it does in the eyes of some of the other leaders, but they are able to focus on the work at hand. So it's hard to separate what is happening at home from what the president has to deal with here. But if there is a group who can do that separating, it is probably these leaders who have some very serious business to attend to here. Savannah?
And Kelly, let's move away from abortion rights for a minute and talk about what would have been the focus otherwise, but is still a huge focus, the war in Ukraine, one of the many issues at this summit. President Zelensky spoke to leaders just earlier this morning, and it was just a day after Kyiv was hit once again with missiles. Tell us about his message and what kind of support is the G7 offering?
Can't stress enough how much Ukraine is what is bringing these leaders together. And President Biden is saying that one of his chief objectives here is to try to keep that unity. And so far, we are seeing that. And the virtual address by President Zelensky into these leaders who he has a personal, almost day-to-day relationship with on the telephone, makes a difference. And so he has been asking for financial and military support. And we know from our reporting that the U.S. is stepping up with additional resources. We know that the U.S. will provide a new surface-to-air missile system for Ukraine, also additional munitions and radar. And the group collectively is taking steps to try to put more pressure on Russia to bar the import of Russian gold, to try to take steps with additional sanctions, and to keep that pressure up on Russia so that it has financial penalties and more condemnation from the world community to make it harder for Russia to wage this war in Ukraine. So Ukraine is certainly dominating a lot of what they've been discussing here, in addition to other issues about infrastructure around the world, climate, and other matters. It is Ukraine, Ukraine, Ukraine for a lot of what these leaders have been talking about.
All right, Kelly O'Donnell, as always, thank you so much for your reporting.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.